Today we're going to react to how I see the USA as a European after 6 months by the channel of Eva Sue Beck. So guys, go follow her. I'm already subscribed because I trust that this video is gonna be amazing. Let's check it out. Let's go.
I feel like I need to preface all of this by just saying that this is not a political video at all. It's just my impressions, my views, my opinions, nothing too serious. Best drivers and worst all-way crossroads. I am not surprised that a lot of people don't have passports in the US. I literally got kicked out of a Starbucks. Would I ever live in the United States? All right. Let's get started. So I'm Ava and I'm a travel YouTuber, as many of you might know. I've traveled to, I don't know how many because I don't really count, but 70 plus countries.
So cool.
And I am as European as it gets in the sense that I was born in Poland, I grew up in England, but I lived in a whole bunch of different European countries. Italy, Germany, Belgium, Poland, England. Recently, I wrapped up a 6-month trip of the United States where I traveled all across the country. You know, the United States is such
I always wanted to do that. That sounds so cool.
An interesting place. Some people love it, some people hate it. So in this video, I want to give you a little bit of a dose of how a European might perceive the US. First of all, cultural shocks. So you see, you know, back home in Europe, we are all brought up with, you know, Americanized culture of some kind. But it's only when you get to the United States that you realize how different some things are. So for starters, everybody smiles at you.
Everybody smiles.
And people give you random compliments on the street. Like,
oh, yes. Oh, when was it? I think like a couple of days ago I was listening to this podcast, this Italian podcast where they were interviewing a very famous Italian rapper that he was complaining that he always gets bad comments, you know, on his YouTube videos by Italian. I was telling him that he's showing off. People on the street will look at him so bad because they will say he acts too much, you know. It feels like he acts like he's superior with his expensive clothes, chains and all that. And he said that whenever he goes to the US, people will say, oh man, you look so cool, wow, cool chain, cool tattoos, cool stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's nice to be complimented. Come on, let's face it.
I'll be walking down the street and someone would just like shout out from the other side of the street, like, nice tattoo, man. Or, I love your hair. Or like, I love your necklace. People are so nice. I love that about the US. Another cultural shock that I experienced are the cars. All the infrastructure is centered around cars. So, you know, in Europe, it would be really easy to like take a bus or a train somewhere. In the US, it's like you got a pickup truck or you have nothing at all. You take your pickup truck, even though you're not hauling anything, most likely in your pickup truck, and like you go to a drive-through restaurant, drive-through cafe, drive-through shop, drive-through
that's crazy.
ATM.
ATM!
I swear, there's probably not a single drive-through ATM in all of Europe. The point is,
in all of the
it is
world,
a very
probably.
car-centric culture. So without a car, it's kind of hard to get around, which is a major inconvenience if you don't drive. Also, I feel like in some of the places that I've been to in the United States, the concept of a pedestrian doesn't really exist because there's like no sidewalks, pavements. I don't know what you call them in the States. Pavements or sidewalks? I'm not sure what they are. Anyway, it's like they are the least important thing on the road, which is kind of sad because, you know, I like walking. Another cultural shock that I encountered was whenever I went to restaurants. What is up with the waiter just literally taking your card and then taking it somewhere? I don't know where they took it. Are they like taking it to steal my data? Are they like, where did they take my card? You know, in Europe.
Don't you just put it on the top of the machine and that's it? Or you put your PIN maybe if the amount is over 50.
Every single time the waiter would come over with the little card reader machine and you would like put in your PIN,
yeah, exactly.
You know, right there at your table. In the United States, they take your card away from you. And then there's the tipping culture. In the United States, you know, you go to get a coffee, it costs like $4, $5, whatever. And then you're taking it away, but you're still expected to give a tip. And it's not just any tip, it's like 20%, 25%. Those are like the little options that they give you on the little iPad. You know, and if you tap like 10% or 15%, that means you're cheap. And that just makes you feel really terrible, like an awful human being. So you end up tipping 25%. We don't have that in Europe. In some countries in Europe, you don't even tip.
No, in Prague, I went to a restaurant and then the guy presented me with the opportunity to tip them. And I was like, yeah, no, thank you. But I mean, it's different. It's a different culture. In Vienna, actually, instead, I did when the waitress asked if I wanted to leave a tip, I left a 20% tip because the food was so amazing. Oh my god! And the beer was like the best beer I've ever drank in my life. So I said, okay, fine. I never tip usually, but this time you definitely deserve it. That was really good. But yeah, but I guess in the US, I've seen a video, I think, before that explained that the waitress don't get paid enough, so they rely a lot on the tips. But it's different in Europe that you got a minimum salary that is gonna cover for everything.
Because I guess waiters are paid an appropriate living wage, so they don't actually need to rely on tips, unlike in the US. In some countries in Europe, you do tip a little bit, like 10% maybe, if the service is really excellent, but in a lot of places, you just wouldn't. So that was a really interesting difference. Not only are the prices in the United States generally higher, but you also have to add that extra for tipping. Also, sales tax. Like, again, you go to a supermarket, it says one price, but you end up paying something completely different. What's up with that? And then there's like a couple of really small things that at first you don't even notice until you get it really wrong, and then you learn very quickly. So date formats. In the States, they put the month ahead of the day. How does that make any sense? Surely you should go from like smallest to biggest, right? Day, month, year. In the US, it's month, day, year.
Why is it
I'm sorry. It's just simply wrong.
Why is it like
and Fahrenheit. Don't even get me started on Fahrenheit, on pounds, on feet, and inches. Okay, I grew up in the UK, so I am familiar with some of those units, but Fahrenheit, just so confusing. So like 0 is the point just before freezing. So anything below 0 that is freezing should just be minus, right? But in Fahrenheit, somehow it's like 20 Fahrenheit is freezing. I don't even know. Spent 6 months there, did not learn a thing. All right, let's move on to some of the differences between the United States and Europe. So I drove all across the United States, right? Like kind of twice, like all the way from Texas to Alaska and then all the way from Alaska to Southern California. And one thing that really struck me is the driving. So first of all, in the US, it's pretty common not to know how to drive, stick shift, like manual. In Europe, that's basically how you learn. Everybody drives manual, and people do have automatic transmission cars, but like you can drive both, right? Whereas in the States, it's mostly automatic transmission, which is kind of funny to me. So I felt like people gave me extra props for like being able to drive manual, whereas I'm just like, well, it's nothing special. Everybody does it back home, Then there's the road rules. Things that I just didn't know before coming to the United States. For example, in the US, even when the traffic lights are red, you can still make a right turn, right? In Europe, that is not the case at all. If the light is red, it is red for a reason. You have to stay there.
But most of the time, especially in roads that have a lot of traffic, they will have like 2 separate traffic lights. One that is just for turning right and the other one for going straight. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense that you can turn right. I mean, you can't really cause an accident, right? Since the car is coming from the other side. Makes sense. It's a little bit confusing for Europeans. We are too strict with our rules, I think.
Stop. Unless there's a little like green arrow like pointing to the right. Otherwise, you're standing there and waiting until it turns green. I can't tell you how many cars have like literally just sat there behind me waiting for me to make a right turn before I realized that I was actually allowed to do it. But they would just, sit there and like honk at me, and I'll be like, what's your problem? It's red. And then my favorite thing about driving in the United States, all-way crossroads. The crossroads with like the like red stop sign and then that says like 4-way or all-way. I still don't know what the difference is, but what it is, and this is mind-blowing, you drive up to this crossroad and then the first person that got to the crossroad has priority. So there's 4 directions, right? And then there's 4 people competing for priority. So you gotta sit there in your car while driving and like calculate, okay, that guy was first, that woman was second, then that guy, and then I'm fourth.
So confusing.
And then there's more cars coming. So it's super confusing. Like it's like a big mental workout. I am not kidding you.
Why don't you just get roundabouts? Here in Europe, like pretty much everywhere there's roundabouts. It's so much easier.
I used to find this so confusing. And like, I just didn't even know that was the rule. So it took me a little while to kind of figure that out with the help of a friend. I would just like literally stand there and like wait for people to go because I had no idea what the hell was going on there. In Europe, the person that's on the right always has priority. That's it. So you don't really have to think about it very much. Another big difference between Europe and the United States is the sheer distance of everything. So back home, you know, you'd like drive to the next city and you'd be like, yeah, you know, I'm like 3 hours away, you know, I'm like 200 kilometers away, or whatever. In the US, like people don't even talk about driving in terms of hours. They're like, yeah, it's a 2-day drive. A 2-day drive?
Wow!
Like in Europe, that is literally like the other end of the continent. Yes. In the US, you're just like driving from one state to the next. It's pretty radical. And also Texas is huge. It's like never ending. Texas never ends. Never. My leg is asleep. Moving on to some of the expectations versus
That's what Texas
reality.
does to you.
Oh yes. Hello, little boy. So naturally, before coming to the US, before doing this massive road trips, I had some expectations built up about the United States. Now, mind you, this wasn't my first time in the US. I had already been to like San Francisco, LA, New York City, Miami, you know, but this is the first time that I actually drove across the country rather than just staying in cities. So yeah, I definitely came with some expectations. So let's see how they matched up to the actual reality. Okay, first of all, I really thought that I would see guns absolutely everywhere. Honestly, like to be completely honest with you, I expected that every Walmart would sell guns. That was literally the idea that I had in my head, that every single Walmart in the United States had a gun section. That is not true. Well, there's all kinds of sections here at this Walmart beyond the groceries there. One thing that I do not see is guns. It took me like 5 Walmarts before I actually got to the one that did have a gun section, which was really interesting. Like in Europe, you just do not see guns, ever. But in the US, they are relatively common. You do see in some states, obviously like states that are like open carry states, you see people with actual guns like right, you know, like right here, which is interesting because that was an experience I never had before. But I definitely expected to see more guns than I did in reality. Now, this is not a video about gun problems and gun laws and things like that. I'm sure we all have our opinions. The fact is that I just expected to see many more gun shops everywhere that I went.
Okay.
And I did. One thing that I was kind of worried about, I expected everybody to always talk politics. Because again, you know, politics is such a big, contentious, polarizing subject, not just in the US right now, but all around the world. So I was really worried that I would come to the US and I would have to have political conversations with people. And that fortunately didn't happen. I mean, the funny thing is that if you're from the States, the way that you have a conversation is telling of your political stance. The way that you joke about gun laws, or even just like looking at fences, you know, with like Trump 2024 or Biden something. There is so much politics all around the US and like I think in the like psyche as well, in the American psyche. But luckily, I think as a foreigner, you get the privilege of not having to talk about politics. And I feel like people do see you as a bit of an alien in some way, that they just kind of spare you the political discourse, which is great. I'm honestly not there. I'm not there to talk about politics. I also expected all the food in the States to be absolute and utter trash, garbage. There's so many of these words that now just trip me up. Garbage is American, trash is British. Is it? Yes, I think it is. Okay, so I expected all food in the States to be trash. It wasn't. it wasn't all bad. Maybe that's because I have been following mostly a vegan diet, so I have been avoiding a lot of the like super processed stuff. But the fact of the matter is that trash food is very, very, very cheap and very widely spread. But in the US, you can also get some of the best food in the world. It's just that it costs a little bit extra. Whole Foods, I love you. The reality is, what's up? What's up? Intruders?
So I'm done with this vegan shit.
The reality is that the US has...
Just kidding. I respect everyone. I respect vegan people. Come on. I could never do it. I gotta be honest with you guys, but I really respect that people can.
The best and the worst food in the world. It's just that the best food comes at a very high price point. I feel like back home, more people have more access to better quality food for like much lower prices. All right, let's move on to some of my favorites, some of my least favorites, some of my frustrations, some of my struggles. Best drivers and worst drivers in the United States. My favorite places in the US, Montana, Wyoming, and then Central Nevada. Not Las Vegas. Never been there. Like the deserts of Nevada.
I wanna go to
There's
Vegas.
so much nature, so much space, so much beauty. Least favorite place in the United States, Yellowstone National
Why?
Park. Granted,
Many people.
I went there like at the height of the tourist season, but man, that place is basically just a massive glorified parking lot. It is like nature completely Disneyfied. And you know, okay, it's great. It's probably more widely accessible to a lot more people, but I just feel like it just lost its charm. So I might give it another shot in the future, but I wasn't wowed. Best drivers
Do you agree with our opinion on Yellowstone?
in the United States, Washington and Oregon. By and large, very polite. Worst drivers, Nevada and Montana. Oh my God. And I'm sorry to say, but if you own a Ram pickup truck, you are very much in that category. I can't tell you how many pickup trucks have like passed me while like you're honking and showing me obscene gestures for not going faster. It's like, man, my car is like a 17-year-old, 3.5 ton expedition rig. I cannot go faster than 60 miles per hour. Physically impossible. You know, have some respect. Yeah, Ram pickup drivers.
I'm not the best driver either.
My favorite type. Here's a few things that I found frustrating and nice surprises in the US. So, you know, I walk barefoot a lot of the time and I literally got kicked out of a Starbucks for being barefoot. And there's plenty of restaurants and cafes and shops.
Okay, I do agree with that. I don't like barefoot. Especially, there's many places that have this tradition that, especially in Asia, but even places in Europe that you have to take off your shoes. I really hate taking off my shoes, especially when you go inside the stores. I think even in Italy it's illegal now. I mean, you're not allowed to get in barefoot in the places and without you wearing your shirt, something like that, wearing like a swimsuit or whatever. Yeah, so, but, yeah, I mean, I don't know how it works in other places. But
Shops that have like that really obnoxious no shirt, no shoes, no service sign on the front door. Man, it's like, yeah, like I'm not hurting anyone by being barefoot.
Oh, no
So
pets
that was a bit
even.
annoying. And then a lot of places don't allow dogs, which is also a little bit sad because this little munchkin over here, come here, come say hello. This little munchkin over here would like to go to your cafe, and he's a very good boy. He's a very good boy. What?
It's a little bit scary, that dog, to be fair. I wouldn't like, I mean, if you have like a little chihuahua or a little beautiful dog, those big dogs, they look so cute, you know, they look harmless, but this one looks pretty scary, to be honest.
Just look at his face. Okay, here are some of the nice surprises that I had when visiting the US. So by and large, I found people in the US to be really, really, really lovely. Very friendly, really polite, very welcoming and hospitable. Another really pleasant surprise, and this was probably my favorite thing about the US, was the sheer diversity of the country. I mean, there's just so much to see. And I could pretty much wild count.
I mean, of course, it makes sense. The US is as big as Europe. I mean, even in Europe, if you go to different countries, you will see different stuff. So it's pretty normal.
In all of these amazing places in my 4x4 rig, I would imagine that if you're in like a giant RVs, what the hell? We don't even have those in Europe. RVs. That's definitely another culture shock. Anyway, I can imagine that if you're in a giant RV, that wouldn't be the case, but in my little truck, I had access to so many beautiful places, and that was just awesome. So, back home in Europe, people sometimes make fun of Americans, saying that, oh, they're Americans, they're not very cultured, they're not very well traveled. But you know what? I completely get it now. Like, I get it why most Americans don't even have a passport. Because everything is so far away. In Europe, we have this amazing privilege that we can literally hop on a train or hop in the car, and within a few hours, we are in a completely different country with a separate language, a different culture. It is just so diverse, and everything is really close together back home. But in the US, everything is so far. Even getting to the next state is a trek and a half. So I am not surprised that a lot of people don't have passports in the US, or that they haven't traveled abroad, or that they don't know other languages, because in order to do these things, you have to be quite privileged financially, which back home in Europe is
the stuff about learning a language, come on. I learned languages without even ever being to the country where you learn the language. That's just something good for your brain, I would say. You can always find people to practice with. So the language thing, and there's so many people from other countries, so you will always find someone to practice, actually. So the language thing, no, don't listen to her. You can learn a language even without traveling to that country.
Very different kind of dynamic. So do I have any regrets? Yes, a couple. First of all, I really wish that I could have stayed longer, but my visa only ran for 6 months, so that's how much time I had, and I just really hope that one day I get to come back and see more of it. Hopefully, someday soon. Another regret that I have is not having really engaged with different communities across the United States. So next time I come, I'd love to get more perspectives on what it's actually like to live in the US today. People from all kinds of different backgrounds and ethnicities and cultures and communities. So I really hope that I get to do that next time. So a few closing thoughts. I noticed that throughout my time in the United States, my accent started changing, and it went from this like Britishy accent to something more like hybrid American. I'm not sure if I loved that about myself. So I'm just kind of like easing back into my normal way of speaking that is like not influenced by, my context.
Yeah, that is so true. That's something that happens. I still remember when I used to live in another country where I didn't speak much Italian anymore. The day that I would go back to Italy, I would start to forget words. It was pretty crazy. When you don't speak your language for quite some time, or you speak with a different accent, that would definitely happen.
So, yeah. On to the big final question, the most important of them all.
Which one is it?
Would I live there?
Oh, okay.
I don't know what the handshaking was all for, just to build extra tension. Anyway, would I live in the United States, given everything I have come to learn about this country, given all the places that I've seen? And the answer is very simple. Yes, 1000% I would live in the United States. To me, the United States is the most beautiful country in the world. It really is.
I
just
go to
love
the
it so
US.
much. I completely fell in love. So if you're American and you're single, email marriage@avazuberg.com to send me offers of marriage so that I can move there permanently and build a house in Montana or Wyoming or Nevada. Just kidding. That email address does not exist. So those are some of my impressions of the United States.
How many of you already sent an email before she said that? How many of you already stopped and sent an email? Be honest.
It is really hard to condense 6 months of life experience into this short video, but if you found any of this surprising or funny, I'd love to hear from you. And if you feel like I should give the United States another chance sooner rather than later, make sure you leave a comment below. marriage@avasubek.com.
Was Prudus? Wow, that's a good community. I mean, she makes some. That's the only video that I saw of Ava, but she seems like a very lovely gal. You know, since we're reacting to your stuff, I'm gonna say gal instead of girl. So yeah, we definitely need to check out some of her blogs. If she traveled for 6 months there, then must be so many stuff to check out. So definitely in the future I will be reacting to her channel, so please go and check it out. If you're not subscribed to her channel, go and check it out. And thank you so much for all the support and watching this video. If you want to become a member of my channel, you can press the join button and you will see the different tiers and all the advantages that you will get by subscribing. See you soon.